Hey everyone, welcome to our latest episode of Kason Morris Learnings. I am Kason Morris, and it's great to be back. And this is a show where we talk about everything related to life, work, and legacy. So thank you all for showing up. I know I've been out of pocket for the last couple of weeks, handling some business dealings, but glad to be back and to be giving you guys value in 30 minutes. I am joined by my producer and current co-host, Christopher Fernandez. How you doing, buddy?
Doing pretty good, man. Can't complain. Happy to be back. Happy to be back on the grind every Tuesday, right? Every Tuesday. That's what we're doing.
That's the intention. Every Tuesday. Sometimes life happens. I had to handle some business offline and was really excited making some corporate moves and collaborating and building the brand. In the executive arena. So just a part of life. But with that being said, that work also allows me to give you insights on what I talk about here, which are all the lessons I've learned. So just to bring those back grounded to the overall model that we use when we talk about the session, this is the Design for Life model. And essentially what we do is we cover three big areas in the model. It's about your life and what you love and live for. It's about your work and what you can get paid to do. And this component of what we're covering in this section of the series is a topic that's near and dear to me, is the idea of your legacy and what you leave behind for yourself and others. So when I talk about the idea of legacy, really the goal here is, how do you achieve true freedom? And I break this down into three big buckets. The idea that you have to work on your future self and making sure that you pay your future self. You have to also think about, how do you protect the wealth that you're building? And when I speak of wealth, I'm talking about that in a broad way. And I'm going to get into a little bit more about that in today's starting episode. And then last but not least, from a legacy perspective, it's like, how do you multiply your earnings? How do you hire your money and your investments? And ultimately, if you work on these three components, based on my experiences, this is what truly allows you to achieve the idea of what I call true freedom. So I love to talk about this topic, and just for clarity, this is not financial advice. This is just a perspective for the things that have worked for me, some of the models and tools that I've used, and hopefully they can help you. So I would love to get into it and talk about, how do you pay your future self? The short answer here is that you got to think about it with respects to future self investment. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean, three steps in general is that you're thinking about your personal self, your professional self, and your financial self. So, what I would love to do is double click on the personal side to start things. And when I talk about personal, this is really making sure you prioritize the personal future you. So, going back to the other series of episodes that we've had, these are asking yourself some questions like, how are you setting aside time each day or each week to focus on your personal growth? How are you thinking about areas that you actually want to improve on? So, think about your skills or things that are really personally grounded toward you. And then also, how are you finding resources that will actually help you in relation to what you want to work on? And then last but not least, now that you are targeting those areas, it's like the idea of, how do you actually create an actionable and executable plan? So when you summarize that idea, it's like, where do you really want to improve right now? And I would break that down into asking two very simple reflection questions. The first one being, what personal growth area is most important to you right now? And this is how you start to invest in paying your future self. Because the work you do now will pay dividends down the road. The other question I would ask is, how can you make time? Because one of the challenges I find when I speak to others around wanting to do that personal work is, how can you go about actually making time in your busy schedule? So I think if you ask yourself those two key questions, that will really start to get you to think about how are you starting your investment in relation to your personal needs for your future state. I can speak to my own story around this is that I always anchor around working on at least one personal development area for myself. Uh, Chris, I'm curious, what are you working on right now?
Hmm. What am I working on? Besides little projects, it's more so like I guess I'm always constantly looking at like you're asking like how am I like constantly working on things like right? Yeah.
Yep,
I
focus on the personal self. Like, what are you working on?
On the personal self, uh well, I mean, in terms of like everyone's always working on just like being a better person, a better communicator, and things along those lines. Um, from a business standpoint, like I'm always like, I guess I'm always just on the look for like things that help our workflow and things along that sorts. I'm still like, are we mainly asking from a personal, or are we asking from like a technical side? Because like, yeah, can you further clarify the question for me?
Yeah, no worries at all. I was actually segueing into the more of the professional side, but the thing is that personal and professional can interplay when you're working on a good design. And what I was asking you was like thinking about your personal growth and your overall sort of areas of opportunity. What are you aligning with for yourself right now? As a it could either be a skill area, even if it's related to your business, it can be a personal thing for you because you are passionate about it or you have energy toward it. So it was just more of a reflection question, like what are you working on that matters to you personally right now?
Yeah, I guess it would just be like communication, communicating with my team, and allowing my team to communicate with me without like jumping down their throats.
Right.
Allowing other people to really give me the most, and just understanding that like the nature of the work that I do is like it's a drop in a bucket. You get me? Like where we're always going to improve as we get better and move forward day by day, so I don't have to really stress out and like make sure things are perfect the day of, because I know that we're gonna have another episode next week and then another episode the next week after that, and so on and so forth. Um, but yeah, like I think that's really what I've been working on personally, for
Yeah.
the business as of late. Just communicating with others and building a team so that I can, you know, be a business of more than just two. So
Nice. No, I appreciate the context and the beauty of your feedback there is that even though it's a personal area related to you in relation to growing your communication skills, it's having a benefit to your professional work. So that's the great part about when you start to think about your future self and what you constantly will work on. It's that idea that you are always your best investment, and you start isolating on those skills that will start to pay you back and pay dividends forever. Communication is really a good one. So I would like to segue from there to talk a little bit more about the professional context. So the way I frame the professional work and how you invest in your professional you is really making sure that you focus on that future you. So it's really thinking about, how are you actually working on aligned work and building skills that are aligned to your values. So from previous episodes and other speaking engagements that I do, one of the things I really ground on is the idea of identifying your career intentions and having a vision for how you want to work and how your values align is really, really important for making sure you're building skills that help you achieve meaningful work. So when you're able to do that, you're then able to create an aligned plan to help achieve that vision or those ideas that you have in place. And then that also allows you to like seek out the right kinds of opportunities. I think one of the things that I know I was guilty of in early career is that, you try to learn everything and you try to gain new skills in everything. And one of the things I learned to take a step back on and reflect about was what are the skills that are more durable for me, more sustainable in relation to what I want to do professionally, and then also aligned to my values and where my energy is. So then that way I was able to seek opportunities and gain skill sets and gain experiences, in that alignment versus just chasing the next big thing. It's funny because actually one of the things that I know is a hot topic for folks right now is all the chat GTP stuff. Um, I know it's a really really hot topic. Chris, do you feel like that's impacting like your work, or have you seen that in what you're doing in the field?
Um, I don't know if it's well, it's impacting a lot of people's work. It's we're living through some like I think we're going to be going through some incredible changes in our lifetime.
Yeah,
I think uh it's going to be hard for those to like for those people who are currently in working situations where they're just like doing the bare minimum. Oh, my bad. I got my volume super low. For those, my bad. I think it's going to be really hard for those for this next generation. For those who are just like coasting by and just like going to work and just like doing these routine things like the world's going to change, and there's a lot of jobs that are going to be replaced. There's a lot of mindless just activities out there that are just not going to exist anymore, and it's going to force us to focus more on critical thinking. And the scary thing about AI is just how exponentially fast it is.
yep,
Like it just keeps getting faster and faster. So it's just like we may broach that point of like AI, critical thinking and like really like affecting and replacing the way we work. Like I feel like we may find ourselves living in a time where like we have to really think about like does a 5 day work week really make sense? Does a
right,
4 day
right.
work week make sense? Like there's a lot of things that can be automated. There's a lot of jobs. There's a lot of things that just they're just repeated tasks. And I,
It's such an interesting point that you make. I'm curious. I don't know who's listening now. If they have any thoughts around how AI and generative AI is actually impacting the work that they're doing. But the way I frame it from an executive perspective is that AI is going to accelerate lower order tasks, and what that's going to do is that's going to sunset some jobs and opportunities, but it's actually going to create a lot of new ones. And you made the point, Chris, around, what I would call higher order tasks and higher order skills, like critical thinking, analysis, teaming, collaboration, those kinds of things. So really for me, when I take on the AI lens, it makes me think of how do you go about developing skills in collaboration with technology. So really indexing on what are those human faculties and those human capacities that can be accelerated with the power of technology, and it is going to impact everyone. So that's why, like, when I think about like work and skill aligned to your values, it's really having that situational awareness of understanding how technology can impact the things that you do value, and then making sure you're building the right skills aligned to that. And that could be a matter of taking on new projects, volunteering for new roles that allow you to stretch and build those skills in a safe space. Also, I would say when it comes to new skill development aligned to your values, make sure you're building relationships and mentors and colleagues that can offer you guidance and support. And then also, like, while you're doing this, just continue to evaluate your progress in relation to like how you're investing in the right skills that will pay your future self so that you're sustainable and ultimately forever employable. And that's where it's going, and from my purview.
yeah.
So yeah, so
I
when
wanted to
I'm
chime in
curious,
real
is
quick.
anyone
We
out
got
there?
some love. Yeah, we got some love in the comments today. We got a lot of people watching us today. Let me pull some of these up.
Nice.
All right, let's see. See if I can zoom in here on this camera here.
Ooh, I see some good ones.
Yeah. Why can't I? This is not collapsing for me. All right. Well, I'm gonna zoom into this bottom half section here.
Yeah, I see Mallory's question. I see Onika's question. It says we are quickly moving to execution and delivery, QA of AI output.
So
Yep.
she's interested to
I
see, will there be an increased need for highly skilled workers? Yeah.
Yeah, I,
For
I
sure.
definitely I definitely foresee that in the future, and really thinking about like, well, what are the skills? What does that highly skilled worker, equate to, and how does that impact the industries? And how is that relative to each industry that you're in? And then I see Mallory's question about
Yeah.
what would I consider a lower order task in L&D. Well, it's very interesting that you say that, Mallory. I think now I've seen a few folks experimenting with how you can use generative AI to automate elements of e-learning development. And when you think about how heavy the load of e-learning often is, and how sort of highly prescriptive in that skill set it has been over time, I feel that the last couple of years in sort of this post-pandemic movement, I feel like technology is really supported in rapid iteration, rapid creation of e-learning modules to disseminate information in an effective way. But now, when I think about that lower order, from purely from an instructional design perspective, it can be just a matter of how do you gather information and insight, and how do you aggregate and summarize those details from stakeholders, really creating speed and effectiveness, in really giving you a good starting point. So I don't think it's a full replacement, which is why the point I make about how are these technologies multipliers for our effectiveness. So now, when I think of the L&D practitioner, I really think of them more like, how do they shift into higher index activities like being a performance consultant, and really partnering with different businesses and different individuals, and really helping them understand how to better learn, apply, and reflect on the knowledge that they're getting, either from like an e-learning or from some kind of on the job training, in a way that gives them result, so that they're engaged and feeling like energized. And that's really the direction I see initially in the near term from an L&D perspective, happening in relation to how AI is impacting the creation of content. I could see it helping support the curation of content, because you don't have to build everything now. And I know we're shifting into this world of these micro learnings and contextualized learning. So it's a lot there. I know what I think about as well is thinking about how AI can support better understanding skills, and skill intelligence, and how to help people navigate and learn more about themselves by using the technology.
Yep.
So good questions, man. Good stuff.
That was some good stuff. We got some asking questions on share more on like governments and governance and compliance. But yeah, it's a tricky situation. Like I'm excited to to be living in this time that we're in. Like a lot of stuff's gonna be
Yeah,
shaken. I
it's
do agree with you in terms of like a lot of people are like seeing it like, hey, it's just gonna replace people totally, and it's definitely going to benefit us and help us more before it replaces us. But
yep,
it is a scary thing where it's just like people are like now worrying about like checks and balances. Like, should we be prepared for it now because we know how exponential it is? You get me? Like me as a designer, like now I don't have the need to go to Fiverr to like try things out in four different ways. I can just ask an AI bot to do it in four different ways. And whatever way I think is successful, I'll choose to further, dig into it and make it special. But what happens when AI doesn't need you anymore? When it's just like, all right, I know how you work now, Chris. Like I got it. This is the Chris style.
yeah. I think the goal there for me is get ahead of it. Stay ahead of the curve. The only constant right now is change. So it's about knowing what the impacts are of these technologies, and how to best build skills around that support your sustainability and differentiation, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you are a skilled worker, in a corporate context, it really does have an impact. And the more you make that mind shift toward thinking about how it can benefit, that actually helps you stand out. So
Yeah.
good stuff here. So like from a future self standpoint, that leads greatly into thinking about like how do you reach out for guidance, and some of the questions you could really ask yourself is really breaking it down is thinking about what is your work view and vision for where you are now and where you're going next? And then ask yourself, how do you create aligned goals based on that view and vision? What should you be learning? What relationships should you be building? How can you approach making progress? And it's not about boiling the ocean, but how do you take those small bites aligned to your view and vision that actually is sustainable so you continue to grow and evolve and invest in that future professional you in a very thoughtful way? And then last but not least, the idea of who can support you. I'm a big believer in network effect, and communities of practice, and really, even when you talk, not to beat a dead horse in relation to the AI conversations, what I look at from an industry perspective objectively is a lot of people in different disciplines swarming the technology and using communities of practice to figure out how they can accelerate their use cases. So a perfect example here of a skill that would be very relevant for anyone in relation to AI is prompt engineering. It's how do you get good at writing prompts that will give you the outputs that can maximize your results. So going on to the last section, but not least, is the idea of investing in your future financial self. And the way I frame this is like, how do you prepay the financial future you? And overall, this goal for me is the idea of how do you have different investments in self, whether it's your skills, whether it's your mindset, whether it's a financial vehicles that beat out your expenses to do those things. So when you start to think about ideas like, do I go to school? Do I get a certification? What are the skills that I need that are rare and valuable? How are these skills valued in the marketplace that can, make sure that I'm getting an equivalent time for money exchange? These are all ideas that impact this idea of how do you prepay your future self. And it's really thinking intentionally and pragmatically around the skills that matter, aligned to your values for the work that you want to do. One of the things here that I think, just to go back more on the financial side, when I think about investment as a logic, it's really thinking about, well, what are your sort of supplemental income strategies, and thinking about the logic of we all have 24 hours in a day. So how are you using different vehicles, your thought leadership, your skill leadership, to create multipliers for you to generate more investment income in a way that beats out your expenses? So one rule of thumb, and this is a research backed rule, again, not financial advice but a perspective, is to think about your prepaying your future self in relation to this rubric, the 50 15 5. I'm curious if anyone knows what this is. And, Chris, you can chime in, or anyone who's online right now can chime in. It is a very simple rule of thumb that,
No idea.
if you can apply it, it actually is super, super helpful. So I'll break it down for you. So the 50 is this logic that you take, if you can, 50% or less of what you're able to earn should be going into your essential expenses. So that's like your mortgage, your car, the kinds of things that are immovable objects in your life. And if you can keep within that 50% range, you're generally doing pretty okay. So from the 15 side of it, 15 represents the idea of these are sort of future state financial investments like retirement savings, stock investments, things that will accrue interest and drive, wealth accumulation over time. So if you can earmark about 50%, 15% of whatever your take home earnings are toward that, it can be really, really super effective toward moving you toward your financial freedom goals. And this is relative to each person. And then the last part of it, the five, is making sure you have a little bit of a nest egg in cash flow, equivalent to about 5% of what you are earning, to make sure you have some short term savings. So that could be for an emergency fund, some type of goal that you have. Um, Also, like a just in case fund. There are lots of transitions that are happening out in the world today, and that income can help you float through those times where you have dips. And overall, if you stay within these guidelines and you have that logic, you're basically able to use whatever's left to save and spend how you see fit. Some people will take, because I don't know if you did the math, 50 plus 15 plus 5 is 70. So technically, there's 30% that should go to things related to leisure, but you could also double down and save and invest those things into other vehicles to accelerate your goals. So this is just a logic around how to start thinking about, the baseline foundational strategies to start to prepay your future self. So that way you're not always in that rat race of exchanging your time for financial gain. Chris, how does that read for you? I'm curious for the audience. Are they familiar with this idea, or just based on my explanation? How does that track for you?
So I would say I'm still very much in like in all of Kason Morris learnings. I'm still on the first half of things. I don't think I'm anywhere near the legacy half of things.
Right.
Um, yeah, that's just reflecting on what we were talking about today. But um, that said, I found value in everything we're talking about today. We have a ton of engagement today. For some reason, I keep glancing at my phone here. We got four
Pop it
people
in.
watching us right now. Let's see what we're doing here.
Pop it in.
I wanted to say thank you to Mallory. Autocorrect butchered your name on the bottom, but trust me, I spelt it right. um,
Oh
um,
man, is that I think my namesake is in the chat. That is dope. That's another case on.
Kason
I
Morris.
I love it. I love it.
Mallory was asking before, like, if I use any AI tools. I currently do not use any AI tools besides like the typical Jasper to like write a sales email that I don't want to write. That's about it.
No,
Um,
no, but I'll challenge you on that. Descript is considered an AI tool.
is it?
Yes.
How? It's just transcribing what people say.
Yeah,
How is
but the
that
point.
AI?
Well, for the audience here, to answer Mallory's question, an interesting video tool is a tool called Descript, and what that allows you to do is you can edit your video by changing the transcript. It'll start to chop up elements of the video to make sure that your voice is clean and that kind of thing. So, Chris, that is an example because it's shortcutting that process for you. So that is a form of intelligence helping you optimize your work.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, so that I guess that would be the one tool that I yeah, not one tool. I'm sure when you think about it in that lens, there are a bunch of other tools that I use that include AI.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess and then I guess you could say all the other tools I've been playing with have like AI features on them, like Canva and things like that. Do you know Canva has an AI feature now, bro?
Yes,
Like,
yes. I mean, it's going to proliferate everywhere. So definitely, it's very interesting times to what we said earlier, and this area of knowledge is moving at lightning speed. I'm still getting, trying to keep up to speed with it, but there are some resources, and I'll maybe share some of those out in future posts on LinkedIn on what I use to try to keep up to speed as it relates to AI in relation to my domain area, which is learning and talent development, but then also more broadly, just to help others. So to drive into the rest of the conversation for today, when I think about this idea of the financial side of self, prepaying your future you, ask yourself a couple of questions as we reflect on this topical conversation. It's, how can you create a realistic strategy that supports your financial goals? And financial goals are relative to each person. But a simple way of looking at it is, how do you earn more than you spend and keep yourself in the green? And then asking yourself, what steps can you take to invest your monetary savings into other forms of investing, whether that's investing to generate income or investing in yourself to learn a skill that can be a multiplier for your income generation. Because I think one of the things that people don't really realize when it comes to prepaying and investing in your financial self, it isn't just about cutting back your cost. It's about making sure you're building skills and talents and doing things that actually help you generate more. So if you look at those two differentials, that's how you can start to really create that financial opportunity for yourself. So to wrap things up, I would love to talk about a few models that I've used that work for me. And when it comes to investing in yourself, there are several models and approaches that you can adopt, but these are three that I think are easy, consumable, and actionable in all the things that we've talked about today. So the first one, we're in this corner here. That's a star. That stands for the star model. And that's the idea of anchoring around your skills, your tools, your attitude, and your relationships. When someone invests in themselves using this model, you're really focusing on investing in your skills and making sure you're acquiring new tools and resources that help you apply those skills and the associated mindsets with it. And then on the back end of that, I always emphasize the importance of building strong relationships, because if you have mentors and folks in your network, they can really support your growth and development when you're leading from a skills perspective. So STAR is definitely one of my favorite models for like that investment in future self. The next one is the idea of care. This is more of a design thinking, iterative systems type of model that I often use, which outlines to making sure there's curiosity, action, reflection, and evaluation. And when you use this model from a self investment perspective, you're really trying to get a sense of what are the things that drive you? What do you have a desire to learn more about, to grow in? What is your vision and your aspirations, which is also why I also lead with the idea of anchoring on your vision and then backing in through experimentation. And then from that point, you're able to run these experiments and take action and then reflect and evaluate to see if those actions made sense for you and you keep persevering in that direction, or do you course correct? So this is a bit more of a systematic way of experimenting based on curiosity to facilitate your growth and pay your future self, because you're informing your decisions through action. Last but not least, this is one that I think that most people are familiar with. It's the idea of grow. So, what is your goal? What is your reality? What are the options that you have? And what is your way forward? So, this is very much grounded in the idea of starting where you are, and using a goal orientation to set clear parameters and specific goals that you want to achieve. So, it's anchored around like, what is your current situation? And then that's the reality piece. And then you would explore different options that will help you navigate your way forward. And ultimately, the model and approach you choose really depends on your individual goals, your needs, and your preferences. But the key here, if you take away anything from this conversation and from the models that I've shared with you, is that it's all about investing in yourself and staying committed to that long-term growth and opportunity, and figuring out the different ways that drive you based on where you are and based on your values. So
Sorry, I had to. It was
I
a
love
nice,
it. I
concise
love it.
one.
You waking people up and everything. So thank you, Chris, for dropping that bomb. But that wraps up our session for today. And again, this is just the beginning of us talking about legacy building, and really anchoring on this idea of future self. This was an introductory piece. So definitely go out, use chat gtp or whatever, start exploring some of those models, get curious about those things, and really just start to think about how you can start to activate and reflect on the questions. And if you have any questions, curiosities about this kind of work or any other work, that's my handle. You can definitely reach out to me via LinkedIn. You can use the QR code to have some curiosity conversations. I'm happy to support, and I'm always here to share. And also, if you're interested in producing a great show like this, you can definitely feel free to reach out to Alive Studios and my producer Christopher Fernandez and his team. They do really awesome work to keep us engaged, to keep us activated, so that I'm consistently giving you 30 minutes of value every week. So
Thank
that
you.
being said, yeah, no worries, man. That being said, we look forward to seeing you guys next week, where we talk a little bit more about the legacy pillar and how do you go about protecting that wealth that you've earned, whether it's monetary, whether it's personal or professional.
Oh wait, we
Have a
have a
good afternoon.
question. There's a
Yes,
question
sir.
real quick. I can't let him down. It's your other brother from another mother. Kason Mo Harris asks, where can we find these slides?
Where can you find the slides? It's a
Yeah.
good question. These are slides these are my personal slides. So perhaps should start posting them and sharing them out. I'm happy to
I think
figure out
it
a
may be time.
workflow. I'm happy to create a workflow to do that. So I appreciate my twin asking for that information. So I will take that as an action item to figure out how to go about sharing out these materials in upcoming sessions. So
Awesome. Awesome stuff. Thank you everybody for joining
all right,
us, and we will see you next week. Bye
have a
now.
good day.